Hey, I'm Matt Gendron, and welcome back to The Shift Within, breaking the chains of complacency. So last time we dug into complacency and how it creeps into our lives and how it makes us feel safe. But really, it's just another chain keeping us bound. And complacency feels easy, but it steals your future, one small compromise at a time. So today, I want to ask a question that I think all of us face sooner or later. How do I make it? Not just surviving the grind, not just keeping your head above the water, but making it, living with purpose, living free. And let me be real with you. I've been in that place where I looked solid on the outside, but inside I was crumbling. I wore the uniform, I wore the titles: soldier, leader, father, husband. But when the noise quieted down, I still caught myself asking, am I really making it, or am I just existing? And maybe you felt that way too. Maybe you're carrying some shame, fear, or that little voice that whispers, you're not enough. I know that voice well, and I know how heavy it feels when you let it call the shots. But here's the good news. That's not where your story ends. You can make it, but not by accident. It takes truth, it takes breaking the silence, but it takes choosing freedom over comfort. So as you listen today, I want you to think about this for yourself. Be honest, strip back the mask, because this isn't about me and it isn't about Dan. This is about you stepping into the truth of your own life and shifting into the person you were meant to be. So let's dive in.
Amen. Amen, Matt. That's what I'm talking about. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Hey, Matt. The question is, how do I make it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, you've been doing this for a while. How did you make it?
Well, I wouldn't say I've made it just yet,
Right.
but I'm still working on making it. I come from and I've talked about this a little bit before, but I come from a family that was very dysfunctional, um, and pretty much raised myself, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And we'll talk briefly about how parents are human and how they make mistakes and whatnot. But for me, that having to raise yourself and not having any like real positive male figures in your life, that's a definite impact on me, because I carried that, going into my marriage, and my marriage ultimately failed. But out of that, I have three wonderful children. I have two beautiful granddaughters. I have another son. I'm hoping that I get to meet this year. I'm very excited about that. But I always look back and I was like, dude, you're never living up to your full potential. You're not doing it. So what's gonna make you live to your full potential? And the answer came to me. It was like, you got to join the army, man. You got to join the army, and don't turn around, don't turn back, just forward, and let's go. So I joined the United States Army. I have zero regrets about it. It's it shaped my discipline in life, and it allowed me to connect with brothers and see what real teamwork looks like. And you know, I miss it every day. I miss the brotherhood, the camaraderie, but it also took a lot from me. It took a lot from my children, and I've missed so much of my children's life that's a big burden that I carry. Um, but what drove me to want to start this is the fact that I've seen so many broken people, and I've been broken, and I'm like, well, life hasn't taken me down yet. So how can I give back? How can I continue to serve? And that answer came with the shift. It was like, okay, if I'm making the shift in my life, I'm going to help others make the shift in theirs. And that's a little bit about who I am.
Yeah, when do you think that you decided to make so let's say life is always about chapters, right? And one of the things I think about chapters is when we apply it to like a book, the page turns rather quickly. But from my perspective, when we change or we shift or we change that page in general, that shift tends to be years
Mm.
in the making. It's never like a, yeah, you might decide it. So that's my big question is what factor really made the full and total transition to make a shift in your life?
So about 4 years ago, I had just broken away from a solar company that I worked for, and it I saw what these salespeople go through and how much they'll tear themselves down, and the depression that sets in with them. And for me, I was like, I have the gift that the army gave me, and that's to mentor. And so I took that and I was like, I'm going to start a small project. And I did. I started a very small project that was called the All Spectrum Training Program. It never came to fruition, but that project was when I started noticing that, okay, I am very broken and I need to start making a shift in my life. If I'm going to help others, then I've got to start doing my shift. And in that same year, that's when I came to my faith. And it wasn't because I was like, "Hey, I'm just gonna, I'm gonna go to church, everything's gonna change, Matt's gonna wear this perfect Christian hat, he's gonna
Right.
be great." It was like, "No, this is the first shift. Like, you're gonna embrace your faith, and you're gonna be thankful because you're still here, I'm still kicking." And if and that's because of the power of God. And so making that first shift, that was that was a very important one. And then seeing my children and having them look at me through a lens of brokenness, letting your children see you broken, and my children saw me broken plenty of times. And I just didn't want to be like that anymore. I was like, man, you got to change. You've got to change. And it took very, very small steps. And then back this last April, I decided, I was like, you know what? It's time to start. It's time to start telling the truth and start putting out how my life and how my beliefs shape me into doing some of the bad things that I did, but also the good that came out of it. Like those mistakes, those scars, and that's what ultimately brought me to creating the shift. Was the shift that I wanted to do in my life, and I don't want to do it alone. I want to
Yeah.
make sure that the mistakes that I've made or the good things that have happened, I want those to be passed on to others, and then others can help others. And that's the that's the story behind that.
Who's gonna carry the boats?
Right.
No, I fully agree. So what do you think the first mask that you took off was? The very first one? 'Cause I have the same mask you do. I hid behind them all,
Mm.
right? And they just allowed me to lie to everybody. So what do you think the very first mask and if you
I
did
wasn't
take
my
that
tr
first mask,
Yeah.
and when you took off that first mask, what did it allow you to do? So, two-part question, I guess.
Ooh, that's a good one. And the first mask that I took off was, you got to be your true self. Stop being somebody else. Stop being what everybody wants you to be. And I was living in a life where I wanted people to see me as like this strong, you know, veteran, served 2 combat tours, did all kinds of cool guy stuff. But I that was just a part of my life. And at the time, I wasn't living my true self. I lost my identity, which is I love helping people and serving others. And but that first mask was, I was living a double life and I had to choose a single life.
Right. You think you were
So
lost? Do you think you put those masks on because you were lost?
I think part of it was because I was lost. I lost my purpose.
Right.
I lost my purpose, and that
Do you,
that was the hard part.
do you think you lost your purpose, or do you think you never knew what your purpose was?
I think I lost my purpose
Okay.
because, well,
Mm, that's a
let me
deeper question than you thought I'd give you, right?
yeah.
Yeah, I bring these things up
You
because
know what?
no, please
I'm
go
gonna
ahead.
that's that's a good one to really sit in on, man. I don't think I ever really knew what my purpose was.
I bring that up because through the same thing with me or and most of us, I think is like you said, we do hide behind our masks, and I don't think that we actually hide behind the masks. I think what ends up happening is we grab a mask and say, "Okay, this is who I am," and it's a very broad spectrum, like soldier or provider, right?
Mhm.
But then we end with, and then instead of us taking and filling that mask with things that matter, we take that mask and we hold on to it because it's the outer shell, and then we fill it with like confetti and BS the entire time. And then once that mask is taken away, and I only point this out because I only started realizing what my purpose was in life is when I lost my soldier mask. When that came off, and I had to realize that that wasn't me. I'm not a soldier. That's just something that I did. That's when I was able to go, "Okay, well, I can't have that mask anymore because it doesn't matter." And then provider, like when I didn't have enough money or I needed more money, that mask, you can be a provider because I provide, my kids can eat, but they're not eating the best. Or, my kid needs her teeth taken care of. Great. I went to the dentist and got the teeth taken care of, but there's more to be done with her and there's more, so on and so forth. So like, am I really providing? I can just say, yeah, I'm a father and I pay the bills. I filled my mask with BS again. Parent. Yeah, I'm here with my kid. Yeah, I took her to school today. I took them to school today. I love them. I gave them a kiss on the forehead, but I'm still filling it with BS. Right. And so I tend to feel that we use these masks maybe as shields to, because like you said, a mask is just to keep people
It's a
from seeing
protective
what you are.
barrier.
Right. Absolutely. So
Yeah.
that, I think it's a huge thing when you're talking about being truthful is that you can figure out what your masks are and then start going into that mask and figuring out what have I put inside this?
Mm.
And is it even worth holding on to, or can I take things from it that were great, just like we do with great leaders, right? Or bad leaders, or whatever the case is, or whoever's in front of you in life. We take the great things and then remove the crap things, and we can still hold those masks. We just don't have to hide behind them. We can just put them on a wall like a belt. You know what I'm saying? Like a IFBB belt or boxing belt or any type of thing
Yeah,
you've
like,
gotten
"Hey,
trophy.
I put this baby up on the wall. I conquered it, and that's not me anymore." Like, I'm not gonna,
It's just a piece of me. It's what created the great statue I'm trying to be now.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So, I think a lot of people don't understand as well that the longer you wear the mask and the more lies you tell yourself, you're digging a very, very deep hole. And a lot of depression comes out of that. And some depression is self-inflicted
Yeah.
because we tell ourselves that we're not good enough, or we try to live a false life and we don't actually do anything with purpose. And all of us have purpose. We all have purpose. And I think the moment that you can speak truthfully and say it out loud, it definitely you break that silence, and that's when the shift starts right there. You're like, "Okay, this is Matt. Matt's doing, Matt was a horrible father." That was a truth that I told myself, right?
Mhm.
I was like, "You weren't there. Um, you chose the army over your family." And but then being like, "No, I served so that way my children could have the best life that they could have." Yeah, I wasn't
Right.
there a lot, but
Yep.
my children have healthcare for long until they're 23, I think.
Right,
And so
right.
so I've got healthcare the rest of my life, and I'm able to provide for them for the rest of my life. and those sacrifices that were made, and that stupid mask that I was wearing of being like, "You're a horrible father because you, served the country instead of doing what you need to do to be a dad." Well, at the time when I joined the military, I was flat broke. I was barely making it. We got our
Yeah.
power shut off a couple times, like, we had to ask for help. So, it's taken off that horrible father mask. That was really, really, that was a tough one to do, and, yeah, but and it still sits there a little bit. I'll glance at it every now and then. I'm like, "Alright, you need to do better. You need to do better."
Yeah.
So, but I think, a good question for everybody is what part of your life looks solid on the outside, but inside, you're barely holding it together.
Right, that's a good question. A lot of us a lot of those things apply to each one of those masks too, and if you don't look deeper into those things and one of my greatest questions or one of the greatest things I like to ask people, and I think it's got the most power is every little, statement you made, every little, reasoning you had for yourself, the question you have to ask every time you say, "Well, I'm this," or "I did that," or "I did this," is stop, write them all down on a page, and then write "why" right next to them. Like, "Why did I do this? Why is it this?" Because if we don't get to the root of all these issues, if you can't figure out why you did them, whether you have a reason or not, especially if you don't have a reason or you can't figure it out, then that's obviously something that it's like, why then why are you holding it, right? Why are you
Right.
doing it? But most of us can come up with a million reasons why. And that goes back into last week when we were talking about being truthful with yourself. I think it goes down into those areas. It's once you're able to ask yourself why and answer those questions, then it starts going into the position of um, have each one of these whys slowed me down or given me the ability to be comfortable in that spot? And then you have to ask yourself, why am I comfortable in that spot? So why is a constant returning question you got to keep asking yourself.
Yeah. And just so that way everybody knows, if you notice the name on and how the shift is spelled, it's spelled with a Y, and it's done on purpose because we want you to find your why. And so I just wanted to put that out there in case anybody was ever wondering why the shift is spelled with a Y, but that Y stands for your why. It stands
Yeah,
for my why. It stands for Dan's why. So, but
absolutely.
I couldn't agree with you more on writing this stuff down and asking why, and a lot of that goes back to how we view ourselves as parents,
Mm,
or maybe how our parents raised us. And I think we have to realize that we're all human beings, and parents are definitely human beings and very flawed. We're running off the past on how our parents parented us, and
parents are
yeah,
human. Yep.
parents are human. Yeah, yeah. I mean, and a lot of it goes back to how we were raised and the values that were inside of us. And I think as parents, we do make a fairly large mistake of being like, well, this is how I was raised, so this is how I'm going to raise my kids.
Right.
And, or, like how authority figures, that may have not been the best examples,
Right.
they shape us into, and they can turn people into really bad leaders.
Right.
You and I saw that inside of USAREC, and it's
Absolutely.
like, holy cow, it's like, what happened? Where did your sense of like serving actually go?
Right. And
And
if the listeners don't know, USAREC is the recruiting command for the U.S. Army.
yes, yes, thank you. That's right. We still use all these little fancy acronyms, and
Yeah, yeah.
a lot of people don't understand what they are. But I can even look back and see some of the things that I did wrong as a leader and inside of recruiting command. running my recruiting stations, and maybe I tore some people down that and just didn't realize that, hey, maybe this is just their flaw. Like it's like dig deeper. A lot of my stuff, I look back and I'm like, you know, I need to be hard on my kids because I just need to be hard on them. I didn't even have a reason.
Right,
It was just like that's how I was brought up, so let's keep doing it.
right.
And I mean,
What's hard? What's hard? Like, from the way you were b brought up, and then the way you were put into the military, was what was hard like, can you define hard? And I mean, obviously, these questions are for anybody who's listening, like, what is hard? Because I've heard this a million times, like, I grew up and you need to be hard, or my parent be hard on my kids because I was hard. But what is hard?
yeah, that's and we use it. It's kind of a buzzword too.
Right.
In reality, it's not hard. You can raise your kids with grit. You can teach them to be tough and resilient. But the hard part, I would definitely say, is getting rid of that mindset.
Right. I think I would like to, in the future, maybe not talk about my kids like I wanted to raise them up. It's hard or difficult or whatever the case is. But I think one thing we lose sight of a lot is the word love and what the standard of love actually is. And if we went off the Christian philosophy, because that's where you and I are going to go, and it doesn't have to be for every listener, but if you wanted to have some type of reference, you can go right there in the Bible and it tells you what love is. And love is sometimes uh not, oh baby, it's okay. Sometimes it's like, hey, you're an idiot, but I
Yeah, that
righteously
tough
want to see
love
you to go.
aspect.
Right. And that's not even tough love, it's just love. And
Yeah.
I think when we talk about words mean things, and when we start defining what these things are, or we have the ability to define them, we no longer go down um the same routes that our parents did, and we can kind of refocus what raising our children to not be like we were raised if it was
Yeah.
rough for you, but we can bring love into that instead of hard.
Yeah. I've seen this firsthand. I watched because it wasn't my place to really intervene, even though I knew what this mom was doing was completely wrong, in my eyes, maybe not in her eyes.
Right.
But I always loved the statement that was used is, well, you know what? This is how I was raised. This is how it's gonna be. And I actually watched a mother let her child just go down a drug route, and just at any point in time, this young lady who's so very talented and very intelligent could have lost her life. And to this day, I don't know how she's doing or anything, but this mother actually allowed her to be homeless and sleep in a park and be like, well, that's her choice. That's what she's doing. And she made her choices. And it's like, where's the love? Where's the love in that? Like, where in the world did you go wrong in making it so that way your child thinks that this is the okay life to live? And this is not a ding on them. This is not a ding on that parent at
Right, because
all.
we're all wrong, every single one of us.
Right. And a lot of us don't look at it, and we don't wanna admit to ourselves that, as
Y-
we were raised one way does not mean we need to continue that.
You just
It
filled your
goes back to
mask
the
with
leaders.
bullshit.
Yeah,
Right? You just filled it with
complete
bullshit.
bullshit.
It's the same thing when you're in the military, you get that little blue book. If you were in the 101st like we were, you get a little blue book that kind of like breaks down the most important policies and regulations you have to follow. But far too often, have you been outside in your civilian clothes? We could just take this as, and you're not supposed to have a cell phone when you're in military uniform and walking. You can't have your hands in your pockets. There's all these different types of policy regulations that come into play. But how many times did a leader run up to you and tell you it was this, this, this? But when you actually look back at actual policy and regulation, they're wrong in that. But most people just take it because someone in charge of them said they filled you with their bullshit, right?
Right.
And then now here you are, you're carrying that bullshit everywhere you went because you never asked why.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's really is, and that really comes down to the question of, like, how much of your life are you still letting be defined by somebody else's mistakes?
Right, absolutely.
You
And
know?
they don't have to define you, right, exactly.
Yeah, and, that's something good for everybody to reflect on, but you have the ability to rewrite your own script. Like, and Dan was just, you were just talking about this, writing this stuff down, writing down why, why did I do this? And being honest about it. And I cannot stress enough how important it is to journal and put things down on paper because it's your ability to say things out loud and almost in but in silence and be your true self. And if you allow yourself to actually just spew out everything that you're thinking in that moment, and then you go back and you read it and you're like, holy cow, those are my true feelings. I've read some of my journal entries and I'm like, wow.
Yeah, yeah, and then you're like, "Why the hell am I even thinking like that?" Absolutely. So you could take you just start taking ownership of it, essentially, right?
Yeah.
And you're right, you have to write it. I don't care what anybody says. I will be the first person to tell you, you have to write it down. Try and do an algorithm or any difficult task without writing down all the thoughts you have in it and then produce something off of it. You know it's not gonna happen. And so and even then, you can even take it into your physical aspects of life. Like, if I have the time and ability to go do a workout in the gym and I write down, I'm gonna go and hit 135 for 3, 4 sets of 10 reps, da 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 da. If I'm not writing it down, I'm never gonna see the result of the work I've done. So if you go into this and you got all your whys down or whatever the case is, or you see something negative or whatever you want to change in it, and you haven't written it down, how are you going to be able to go back to it and see if you've made progress?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You can't, there, again, you're just not being honest with yourself. If you can't go back and read it somewhere, you can't hold yourself accountable for these things.
Yeah. And you can't see the positive things you know, that you had as well. And you're and just the amount of growth alone. I mean, I look back at where I was, 5 years ago, out of the fresh out of the military, still carrying that egotistical chip on my shoulder.
Yeah.
Changes that I've made to be more compassionate, to be more understanding, and a lot of that is thankfully because of my faith. But not only that, there's some very positive things that I've listened to that make me more apologetic. It's like, hey, like, somebody cuts me off and I want to start screaming and yelling at them, but it's like, who knows what's going on in their life right now? They could be trying to get somewhere in a hurry. Maybe they're a kid, maybe they're late, maybe they're, who knows what's going on.
Right.
And that's just a small example of that.
That's just a
But,
small piece of changing yourself to see the perspective from other people's sides. So that way you're not
right,
stressing yourself out over silly stuff.
right. And I've even done this with conversations. I mean, we've been seeing so much about Charlie Kirk, and I don't want to focus on Charlie Kirk. What I want to focus on is the fact that the negativity that is just coming out of it and who shaped those beliefs in their life. Where did the values go? Where did the value of human life go?
Right.
You know, and and there's parents out there that are raising their children to hate. And
On both
you,
sides of the aisle, bro. On both
oh
sides
yeah,
of the aisle,
oh
absolutely.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And there's churches that are out there teaching people to hate, you know? I've listened to plenty of sermons where they'll rag on another church or rag on another religion. And it's like at that point you're on a different agenda.
Right.
This is not Christ-centered, you know?
Or
S
even I mean, if you you're all these are examples of something or someone not taking ownership whatsoever. Because once you start
Exactly.
taking ownership for your own problems, then other people's problems don't matter. I can't change the world. I can only change me, and then through me, I can start changing the world. So through my example, others will follow. So is my example is the examples my parents gave me the ones I need to give out to the rest of the people that I'm in congregation with on a daily basis or whatever the case is. Do the exact same thing, right? Like, so can you imagine uh parents before us and before us and before us and so on and so forth, they're all rolling around on masks too. It's one thing I talk to my oldest daughter and son about is like, just understand that most parents out here are flying by the seat of their pants and they don't even know where they're going. The majority of them have no idea where they're going. Also, you have to start once he's, you know, you have to, yeah, exactly. You have to take ownership of what you think is uh, your purpose or where you're starting to drive forward from.
And just reflect this, if you're listening to us, just reflect on this for a little bit. And I said this question a little bit ago, but how much of your life are you still letting be defined by somebody else's mistakes?
Correct.
You know,
And write
you,
them all down. How much of your life and then I mean, I would even say I'll even go into it, write down all the people who have shaped you and what they've given you and what you carry.
yeah, you and I were in a pretty deep discussion one day, and this was a really powerful thing that you brought up to me, and it was like, what would your obituary be if you vanished today? You know, and just imagine your story. How would your story be told? What would your legacy be? What would your if a true obituary of yourself was actually written, what would it say? Would it show excuses, wasted potential, maybe some courage, some truth? If you don't like the answer though, it's not shame. It's a wake-up call. And Dan had told me about you doing this exercise, and I actually did this exercise and wrote my own obituary. And just so that way people can see where I would view myself or what I think others would write my obituary about. I'm actually going to read it.
Absolutely.
So, and hopefully this is not my actual obituary, but this is coming from my point of view. So I actually took the time and I wrote down what my obituary would be in my eyes, how I would think that others would view me, or maybe they didn't know this about me. So if you can write your own obituary, and this isn't like doom and gloom or anything like that. It's just a reflection of your life.
Right.
What's Matt's story? And so Matt's story is, you know, Matt's Gendron. He was a veteran of the United States Army, served honorably for about 15 years. I medically retired, completed 2 combat tours, one in Iraq and one in Afghanistan. He was the father of 6, 4 sons and 2 daughters. One son he never got a chance to meet. He was a grandfather to 2 beautiful granddaughters, but Matthew often chose his own happiness over doing the right thing. He was known for helping others, it was his passion, but he failed many times as a father, a husband, and a partner. He was an egotistical man who allowed his mistakes to sometimes define who he was. His friends loved him, even though he would never allow that love to change his inner beliefs. And many times he would still continue to chase the easy wrong over the hard right. In the last years of his life, he gave his life to Christ, and still sometimes he chose the easy wrong. He stumbled often, but he never quit, hoping his story could inspire others to keep fighting. Matthew refused to be defined by his failures. And Matthew was a man of contradictions, though. He loved God, but lived imperfectly. He wanted to lead, but sometimes lost his way and carried both the weight of regret and the spark of hope. Sadly, he passed away due to complications of alcohol and medication. He is survived by his children, mother, stepfather. and an uncle whom he loved. Those who knew Matthew best remember his relentless belief that people can change and his unwavering desire to help them do so.
Very nice. Very, very nice. I'm clapping over here. It's hard to write that obituary. Um, and I think what's great about that obituary is in the second part of an exercise like that, you write your future obituary too. And I think it really aligns. And usually when I have someone write their future obituary or I talk to them about it, it's where you want to be on the date of your like where you would assume you're going to die. I think I pushed mine out to like the age of 85. And then I always tell them like when you build this second one, this is the one that consistently changes. So when you get to the end of that obituary, you're trying to even try and puff yourself up, and it's okay to like add that you did incredibly great things. And although you might never reach those things, those are just goals that you have in front of you and the way you would want someone to talk about you after you passed. And then you can go every week or every month or every 3. I do mine every 90 days. And I just go in there and readjust my obituary to one because your purpose changes all the time.
Yeah.
It might be
And
aligned in the same things, but the direction of your purpose starts changing. And then you can start aligning yourself and creating goals to meet those things that you have in your the obituary you would like people to say about you.
I think 90 days is a really good marker. And most people, and you'll probably, if as you're listening to us, this 90-day marker, every 90 days, if you look back, there's some kind of significant life changing event that's happened. Just statistically speaking, that's just how it works. And I mean, I 90 days ago, I was with my children and on a wonderful trip, and now, I'm back starting all over again, and I'm gonna be relocating. So there's there's changes that always happen in our life, and if you're looking back and you can rewrite this thing and um,
Absolutely. Right? You can do a lot in 90 days.
yeah, a lot of change in 90 days too. A lot of change. But don't the thing about it is that you gotta stay consistent with it. Because if you don't stay consistent, then you're going to just revert right back to the old way.
Right.
You know, an alcoholic, they they quit drinking and then they go to a bar and they're like, "Oh, I'll just have one." One turns into 5,
Right.
you know, and then they start going back on things that they say they would never do.
Right.
I'm never gonna drive after I've been drinking, and people, I mean, we see it around here all the time where there's DUIs. My children recently lost a very close family member to a DUI accident. Y- you think about the changes that you need to make and just how consistent you need to be with this. And I've seen this in some of the people that I've coached, and it's amazing to see them just be positive and acknowledge their wins. And your wins is the legacy that you want to leave behind. Sure, there's going to be people out there that are going to judge you for your mistakes. They're always going to carry that judgment. And sometimes you have to understand that people are really just kind of projecting. They're
Absolutely.
they're not facing their own struggles, or they don't they don't want to acknowledge the fact that they're wearing a mask themselves.
Oh, yeah. I'd like
Yeah.
to get more into that in the future.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that one's a heavy one.
And then,
Um,
yeah, well, those are giant fears, right?
yeah.
And when I say fear, I can even go back into when my father passed away, because he passed away April 22nd, 2022. And when he passed away, uh, I was the only person that could take care of my father and his affairs. Now, my other members were there, but for me, I felt like God had called upon me to be the shepherd at this moment, and which is where I ended up. It's where I go anyways, right? I enjoy it's not that I enjoy leadership and being in charge. I hate being in charge of things, but I hate to see people not able to do it at the moment and then just sit back. So for my father, I'm his closest confidant, and when he passed away, and I had to go through all this stuff all by myself, pretty much dealing with all his affairs and everything. m- When it was all said and done, my father passed away. People in my own family, super close to me, were talking about saying some pretty off the wall things about me, like he's only in this for the money. He doesn't really care about his dad. Like some pretty, some pretty terrible things my family was saying behind my back that they obviously and most definitely were never going to say to my face. But that stuff ate me up for a long time, and it started making me feel like I started letting those words take control of me pretty heavily. And I started, instead of doing the right things. I mean, I did all the right things, but I started to not do the right things because I feared not retribution, but the negative comments and pretty much family that didn't really talk to me anyways. So I don't know what I was so scared of, but these were fears that I had to address and then go, well, I'm a man and I make my own decisions and I was put in charge of this. And as a man, every decision I made was my decision and I just hold myself accountable. So if they are pissed off and they have a right to be pissed off about it, that's fine. But I made that decision, not them. So if they
Yeah.
hate me for it, then I'm going to live in their disdain for me. And in the future, eh, my example will lead for it and they'll either have to come with grips that I did my best job or they'll just have to live in their own pity.
That's an incredibly powerful thing that you just said right there, because a lot of people will they'll give up because they're like, you know what, they're just gonna talk shit and this is not gonna go any further. And hopefully you're not you're not still beating yourself up about it. How much of that do you think was in it, possibly like maybe they were like projecting onto you, and maybe those thoughts were maybe from them and
I think hurt people, right? I think my family loves me to the point where they didn't say it to my face, not because they were scared of me, but they were fearing the outcome of my conversation back with them. And I think that, and I don't want to say that I don't want to ever say people are doing it to project in totality, right?
Mhm.
But I think that projection could be their fear of this loss or the like from, my father was a big piece of my family. So him passing away was hurtful for everybody. And so because they're hurt and they don't want to sit and talk and ask me questions for whatever thought process they have, and I don't know what it is, but I think they created those things to make themselves feel better in the moment because, and, well, we'd be diving into my family's psychology, but nobody can be happy around anybody. So, you know,
And this
my family's
happens.
all
This is
negative.
pretty normal. This is all pretty normal
Right.
stuff. The only
Right.
thing is that you're just saying it out loud. There's so many dysfunctional families out there that just are portraying this perfect life, and it's like, no, you know?
But
And it's not our business what happens behind closed doors, but just understand that, you know, most families are pretty dysfunctional,
right.
and that's just family. It's just how it is. My family barely has anything to do with me. Um, for I mean, most of them are older now and they just I mean, I'm in my 40s, so they're pushing 70, and they just don't have the means to be able to do it, and I live on the other side of the country.
Right. I think that was one of the benefits from joining the military was that I was able to separate myself from the herd I call family. Because
Yeah.
everybody in my family that never left or never separated, and I'm sure it's the same with every family, you kind of just fall into um, that hive mindset, right?
Mhm.
You might have your own beliefs, you might get some stuff on the outside, but once I was able to separate myself from those people and come back to them, I can always go back and cut my family down and be like, "Yeah, this is who these people are." And like you said, like you love the fact that you wanna help people because you think people can change, you know they can. And I'm the same way because I come from the bottom barrel of humanity and it just took those shifts or those things that made me wanna transform. My father being there, the idea was, okay, I separated myself so long from this family, and I could just tell them to go F off and walk out. Like, it's like a lot of my family members have done in the family. They've just said, "I'm just gonna separate myself permanently from them." going and forth with your lives. But for me, it was more like one of those things where I need to lead by example. So even though I know they said all these negative things about me, my goal, the transformation for me began in that element right there when it came to my relationships with my family was going, I don't care that they said these things because I love them and I'll always show up. I'll always be there and they can always talk negatively about me. And the only thing I'm going to do is return them with a hug and I love you. And if there's anything I can do for you, please let me know and I'll show up. And that's just like my idea of what a being a man is. And that transformation allowed me to just be an example. So when they talk nonsense on the side, personally, between me and God, I know who I am, and then sooner or later they'll figure it out too.
Yeah. And just saying that truth, I mean, out loud, I mean, it dismantles a lot of fear.
Absolutely.
Um, and confessing maybe a lie to somebody else that you've been like hiding something from them. It breaks that grip of being truthful and being honest. Truth hurts. It hurts. And telling yourself the truth, it hurts. But it will truly dismantle that fear if you start acknowledging it. And I mean, you can't make friends with your fear. Like you cannot do that. You have to replace it with the actual truth.
Absolutely.
And do not live in a woe is me mindset.
The what the
I
yeah.
lived in a woe is me mindset at one point in time, like, oh, it sucks, life sucks,
The
right?
truth should hurt your feelings.
We had the chaplain when we were in Afghanistan, and I can't remember his dang name, but he had his little wheel of wellness.
Oh, yeah.
And that was his thing. He would be like, we can sit down, we can talk, you're gonna be sitting here, you're gonna be talking about how woe is me, like, oh, I don't want to be here. And I love the fact that you'd be like, you can come talk to me, but I'm not gonna get you out of here. So we'll talk about some stuff. And that chaplain went through a lot. So
Yeah.
um, and it's the reason why he became a chaplain. But I think a good question for everybody is what fear have you been carrying silently, and what would change if you finally told the truth about it?
Right. Great question. And there's a million fears. A million fears. It's crazy. It goes all the way back from your childhood on to now. And you would be surprised that the fear that you have today of things, you can probably bring that fear all the way back to your childhood.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's exactly where it goes.
And
Yeah, I
this is
love that.
really important for parents too to understand that. Like what we do with our children, they will that if you start if you're not parenting to your best ability, or you're doing things that are wrong, they will start to believe that that is the way that life is,
Right.
and they will carry that with them into adulthood. And that is a mistake that I made. I just thought, like I started drinking at the age of 14, and I thought that was completely okay. And
Right.
and then eventually I turned into a full blown alcoholic.
Yeah.
And and it's like, oh, okay, well, that was, yeah.
Whoops.
So,
Yeah.
you
Whoops.
know, so, just think about that though. What fear have you been carrying silently, and what change would come if you finally told the truth about it? The truth to yourself. You wrote it down.
It's
Just
so
think about
crazy.
that.
Truth is so like, I can't harp on it enough. Being truthful and I'll tell you this, if you start to become truthful in front of people, once you start being, like, super relaxed in your in the right comfort, the comfort of truth, people around you 2 things will happen, and this is I mean, I can just only talk about this anecdotally, but from my experience, once you start becoming truthful, you start becoming a beacon of, this beacon that people wanna come to because they know you're always gonna give it to them straight. I used to be called an asshole everywhere I went. Like, when people would introduce their family members or friends, before they even got around, like, I showed up, they'd be like, "Hey, listen. He's a bit of an asshole, but he means well and he's really kind. He's just super asshole-ish, and I used to get upset and offended by that, but what it really came down to people telling people, like, "Listen, he's rough around the edges, and he's super direct, but he'll buy you brand new shoes if you need it, and if you fall down, he'll pick you up and dust you off," kinda, you know what I'm saying? So, um, once you start becoming truthful with yourself, then there's no then you it's impossible to lie to other people. It really is. And then people start coming to you for maybe not answers, but your input because they think, well, I have too much, I have too much of these lies that I tell myself, and if I give it to him, he'll tell me and shoot me straight. Or you'll have the other side of the coin where people just don't want to talk to you at all because you keep putting a mirror up in front of their face, and then they start coming up with reasons why they hate you. You know?
Yeah. I wouldn't necessarily say you're an asshole. I would say you use, and I love this word. I learned this term. It's called radical candor.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah,
I got called a rated R Christian. That's
that's
not I
probably
have a buddy, Mike, he's like, "Yeah, man, they call me rated R Christian." I was like, "Imma steal that forever." Like, you know, but it's true, right? Like, you got someone who can speak on the pulpit, which is great, and that speaks to a majority of the people, but to speak to people like you and me, I kinda need an asshole.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I need that. Like, no, dude, stop. You're doing things wrong. Just cut it out, man. And I have friends like that that will call me out. They'll be like, yeah, but what did you do? What did you do?
I have a really good friend, Tom. I'm gonna say his first name here. He's about 80 years old, and when we first met each other, he would get so mad at me because I would say my phrase was, "Yeah, but I don't really care. I don't care what they think." And he would get mad and be like, you have to care what they think." And we would get lost in that conversation all the time. Him and I mean, I'd be, "Get out of my face, Tom." You know, me yelling at an 80-year-old man, feeling like such a jerk, you know, but I'm like, "Ah," you know, like getting riled up by it, but he meant well. And when I really sat back and thought about it, I'm like, I do care. I care. I just don't care about certain things. But the way he heard me say, and it always like, how do you present yourself? And when I tell someone I don't care, and they obviously see that you care, you know, they kind of call you out for it. And I couldn't even be truthful with myself in front of him. It took me time. He's actually the only reason why I broke free of that one chain holding me down right there was I care, but I don't care like how you feel about me when I'm giving you direct information because at the end of the day, if I'm being truthful, honest with you, and not only that, but I'm doing it out of love, righteous love, then then all things will come the way they need to, you know?
Yeah, yeah. And you kind of have to make this a daily thing, daily truth. You can't wait for the perfect future moment, right? Because like a thief in the night, he may come.
Yeah.
Um, and so if you're waiting for that perfect moment to make a change, don't just start now. Start thinking about everything that Dan and I have just been talking about. And there's a lot of truths that came out in this. And and that's why we do this. That's why this project exists. Um there was no perfect moment for me to do it, to start working on this project. It was like, no, it's you got to do it. Go now. And I did. And but I also had to be very honest with myself and be like, you're going to be raw, you're going to be honest, and you're not going to hide behind a mask. And I have to live that every single day. And I find myself like if I do something that I would consider dishonest, I would be like, "Hey, you know what? I'm really sorry I approached it like that. You know, I, you know, maybe I came off sounding like a narcissist or something." That's another buzzword everybody loves to call people
Yeah.
narcissists
Yeah,
nowadays.
yeah, yeah.
And it's like, well, are you a narcissist too? Because I mean, like, but anyway, you know, but you just, and you can't allow things like that to shape you. And you got to wake up and you got to give yourself some kind of affirmation, but be truthful with yourself. Like, hey, I know shit's hard. I know this stuff is bogging me down, but I got this. I
Right.
got this. Oh, just win the day. Win the day. Even if the day kicks your ass, take the win. There's a win in there, but be honest with yourself. And maybe that is the win that you took that day. It was like, you know what? I finally just admitted that, I'm living in a world of fear, fear of judgment of others. Like I've got to do this. Otherwise, people are going to think badly of me. They're going to think I'm lazy, I'm the sluggard, whatever. So you got to drop the mask and just stop lying to yourself. And, Dan, you brought this up the last time we were talking and how we, in the military, we're instilled with a set of values. And, for us when we served, we anchored ourselves in those values.
Yeah.
And then it's amazing though, once you get out, it's like, oh man, nobody's looking over my shoulder. Nobody's going to be doing my evaluation report and checking
Right.
off,
There's no
that
there's
I
no
hit.
value system out here, yeah.
Yeah, there's no value system, and what you see is the real world. And I think Colonel Hill said this really, really well when we got back from Afghanistan. It was like, if you expect the world to care about you, you're wrong. They don't care what you did, what you do. And I think he did that so that way you could get that in your head right away. Like, don't be going out there being like, oh, look at me, I served. You you know, better be thankful for me, you know,
Yeah.
and there is some people that do carry that chip on their shoulder. I've even made statements. I'm like, oh, this is what I serve for. Great, great,
Yeah.
you know.
What was that one? And I'm gonna use the F word here, but what is it? The one I used to love this saying when we were deployed. It was like, "Fuck it, we'll figure it out when we get there."
Oh yeah.
And I love that one for such a long time, and I still carry it to this day, but it brought out some negative connotations and things too, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that
Uh,
that mindset is just like, "Ugh." And then when you get there, you're like, "Oh, man, like, I didn't like, what happens if it all goes wrong?"
right. Again, right? "Fuck it, we'll figure it out when we get there." Right?
Right?
It's like, I don't have an answer for nothing.
Yeah. Like, "Oh,
I
man."
think that works when like, when we were deployed, like, I could say that to the guys. But the guys knew me, and they were like, "Yeah, well, when we get there, I know that he's gonna figure it out." But when we're out here, you have to say that to yourself, and then you have to start trying to figure out how to change that issue. You don't have people around you who have, almost died next to you and know that you can handle that situation.
Yeah. And
Awesome.
and there's not a lot of people that know this, but Dan is a very, very lucky man. Like, he's the one in a I don't even know how many times that happens to people, but, I mean, I'm thankful you're here today, and I'm thankful for the technology that was put in that Kevlar.
Oh,
So,
yeah, man. Yeah, well, yeah. Take a couple bullets and be like, "What just happened?" I'll tell you
but
what, I was not a nice man after that moment,
N no,
especially not
no,
to the
you were not.
PL.
No, I remember that one very clearly.
I was chewing everybody's ass out.
Yep, and, and you had every right to. There was bad leadership calls that were done on the ground that day, and you knew it, and that speaks to your dedication to service and your dedication to the team, and to be able to not have that fear to be like, "No, sir." Like, "No. No, no, no."
Yeah, I think the upsetting moment there, and I reflect back on that moment a lot, because I reflect back on that moment because when I ask myself why was I so damn angry? And when I really come back to it, it helped me try to find my purpose too. Because when I was angry about that moment and I reflected on it, I wasn't angry that I got hit. I fully expect to die there. Everybody who knows me knows that I attempted to get myself killed over there constantly. I was always trying to be the first one up front. I'm always trying to just walk off by myself. I was more upset because I saw Owens on the left, and I could see rounds just slapping all around him. And then I saw, Turcotte off to my right about 30, 40 meters, and I could see him and his face in the front in the situation we were in, and I couldn't live with it's my second deployment. I've personally, I've never lost or gotten none of my guys have been injured because I've always been the one, like, I'll go first. But at this time, I had 2 other guys with me, and just the idea of possibly losing them to something silly like that got me so hot and frustrated. So it allowed me to know my purpose is other people, and it ain't never gonna be me.
Yeah. That's and
Reflection, man.
yeah, yeah. That's, I got goosebumps you talking about that.
We can share more of their stories in another day,
Yeah, in another segment, man. It's we've, we don't wanna get too far.
into the woods with
But
that, yeah.
if you noticed, I mean, just the truths that you're, like, exposing right now and, like, how much you had to stop, like, lying to yourself. And, freedom from all this is definitely not easy at all. It means you're gonna choose discipline over drifting back to old ways,
Yeah.
truth over comfort. Um And it's gonna hurt. It's gonna hurt when you first start doing it. But the rewards of doing it far exceed what you will lose if you don't.
Yeah. I think someone said it today, don't let umpteen amount of years of work be dismantled by 1 minute of bad decisions.
Exactly. Exactly. I'm a huge Ted Lasso fan.
Oh, yeah.
Um, love Ted Lasso. You wanna see something powerful, watch some Ted Lasso. Um, if you wanna watch what real leadership looks like, watch the Band of Brothers series, the Band of
Absolutely.
Brothers series. But, it's he made the statement. He's like, "I don't know about you, coach, but I hope all of us are not judged based off our weakest moments, but rather how we came out of those weak moments." And I know I
Right.
didn't say the quote exactly how he said that, but just just hearing that, it's like, are you going to allow your past mistakes to define everything about you? And if some people were still judging you, it might be time to cut them off.
Oh,
You
yeah.
might be around the wrong crowd, okay? And when you start being truthful and honest with yourself, you'll realize how many people that are just around you just surviving.
Yeah.
That you might have friends that are that you thought were friends, but they're literally they need you. You're a survival mechanism for them.
Right.
And then you'll notice that the real people will start showing up, and they will come at the most opportune times for you, and you're not even going to realize it.
Right. Absolutely. I
And
think it goes, one thing I tell my son and a couple of other guys I talked to the other day, I said, What it feels like, and this is the only way I can give it to you, is there's a wall in front of you in your mind or whatever the case is. And for the first time in your life, if you're coming to the podcast, the segments here, and you're listening to them, remind yourself that that wall exists in front of every single person around you. You're just the only person who's willing and has already gotten up onto the edge of the wall, and you're looking over and you see that the grass is greener on the other side. But the problem is the people behind you have never seen over that wall, and they're holding on to those ankles, not because they hate you, but because they've never seen over the wall. And it's your job to get over that wall and then lean your hand over. And then whoever decides to grab your hand, you pull them up with you. And that's all that it is. But just remember, you've already seen over the wall and nobody else has.
yeah, yeah. And I mean, I was just thinking about like how many people get drugged down by the misery of others.
Yep.
And I mean that statement, misery loves company, could not be more true.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like there's emotional vampires out there. They love to steal your energy. And I used to allow that to happen. I would be like, "All right, yeah, just yeah, live," you know, and kinda if you start allowing all that negativity around you, it's cancer. It is cancer. You will and it's very contagious, and you will catch it,
Yep.
and you you're gonna start writing a story about yourself that is just not true. And I know that's really hard for people to break off, and you might have to cut people off, but some people will just naturally just drift away from you.
Yeah.
And the ones that are meant to stay will always be there.
Yeah.
And they are not afraid to hear your truths. I mean, I went through a lot over the last 60 days, and I had to come out with some very heavy truths to you, Dan. I talked to you about some of
Yeah.
these, and I talked to another brother, Brandon, David, and just being like, you guys got to know this. Like, yeah, I'm doing we're doing this project, but you still got to know the truth about Matt. And like, I think the big question that I had to ask myself, and this is what I'm gonna ask everybody else, is if you were brutally honest with yourself right now, where are you choosing comfort instead of freedom?
Yep.
And that comfort is usually in the lie,
Oh, yeah.
is the lies that you tell yourself.
It's very comfortable to tell myself a lie.
You know, I was talking to a friend the other day, and they were explaining to me like I finally had to come out and be honest about um finances and with their spouse, and like their spouse received it with love and was just like, it's okay, we've got this, we're going to make it through this. And just the you could hear the like the happiness, that just the support that he was going to give because they were able to tell the truth about something.
Right.
And and we're not telling everybody to go out there and just start confessing all your stuff. You
Yeah,
need to be
yeah, yeah.
very, very careful and you need to be very careful with who you're disclosing your information to. Make sure it's a trustworthy source.
Yeah.
Um, for me, I still carry this in the back of my head. I kind of I went into a Bible study and I like had diarrhea of the mouth and just kind of confessed some of these things out loud that I'd been doing. And the leader of that pack, he's kind of funny. He's like, he's like, I'm really happy that you do this, but I want everybody to understand not everything has to be confessed out loud. You do not have to get up in front of the church and confess things out loud. The church that I go to, they sometimes there'll be somebody that'll come up on there and they'll be like, I did this and this is my testimonial. And you know, at that point, I don't look at it very much like a confession. It's more like, look at me. But
Yeah.
that could be an inner belief on my
I
part. It could
think I
be
think I think that is because I have the same ones. I always like to put somebody out there like this just them because how often do you tell your truth to everybody comfortably
right.
without being like because I think it's hard when you tell your truth because you also have to expose that you're a bit of an a-hole. Like, and I like to tell everybody like I'm a piece of shit too. Like
Mhm.
I'm always there as a POS. It's always going to be the case. I just don't want to be.
Yeah.
Right.
And
So
that's just a view of yourself.
right.
And and I'm sure in the military that's especially in USAREC. Oh,
Label. Label, label, label.
label, label, label.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't think that I'm a POS. I think I've just done POS things,
Yeah.
right? And that's one thing you get to remind yourself. You're more than likely not a that. You probably just do things like that, and then you need to understand why you do things like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Some of most of those POS times were when we were 20. So I mean, like I was a POS because I was 20. I had, no
Right.
one had knocked me down yet.
Mine was definitely in my 30s.
Oh, yeah.
and reached into my late 30s and then, reached into the 40 era, but I had to be honest with myself,
Yeah.
and I was like, "Dude, you're doing some really crappy things, you gotta stop." Like, what would your kids think? You
Right.
know, like, how I was like, how I viewed relationships or my previous relationships. Like, how would I want my daughters to be treated?
Right.
You know? And I live in fear that that they could possibly end up with somebody like I used to be.
Right.
And but I know the warning signs and I know how to be honest with my children.
Right.
And it's it's helped so much. But
I think that goes right back into the obituary, right? I mean,
yeah,
how do you want to be viewed when you're gone? And how are you working towards that?
yeah, yeah, yeah. And every single choice that you make, it either moves you towards getting rid of those chains that are binding you down, or it's just gonna slap more on you, and you're just gonna keep getting held down, and pretty soon, you're it's like, why even get up?
Right.
And then you get into a very, very complacent mindset, and, yeah, yeah,
Let's go into our closing. Absolutely. So we'll talk about the obituary Matt has here, and we both want to see you all do it. You know, tonight or whenever you have the time. Start the obituary because what we've learned today is that we all do hide behind masks. We all fill our masks with BS, and we never ask ourselves why. Um, we know that it all takes brutal honesty inside of ourselves. We all know that we're trying to leave a legacy, and I can't tell you, Matt can't tell you what your legacy is. You have to tell it yourself. And like I said, it all stems back from being truthful. And when you can start defining your values, then you can start figuring out where you're supposed to go. But tonight, you should be writing that, or when within this week, I would assume you should be writing that obituary as soon as you can. And just remember, when you write it, it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be all spelled correctly. Just start writing. Give yourself exactly 15 minutes. And on that 15-minute mark, I would just stop writing. And whatever you got, you got. And then you can go back and just read about it and see where you are and then make changes later on in the future. But
yeah,
you really shouldn't like the things you see because you wouldn't be here listening to us if you did. And even if you are on the route towards that, there's no reason not to write it today and then see what things you can make better for yourself and your family and the people around you.
yeah, and if you don't like what you see, good. That means that you got time to rewrite, and, you know, I just good. If you don't like what you see, that's good. That means start rewriting your story.
Right.
Start stacking up those small wins. Start being honest with yourself. Start taking the masks off.
Right.
You know,
You
5
can't.
years from now,
Yeah.
do you want to be explaining your excuses or showing the freedom that you built for yourself or
Right.
that legacy like Dan was just talking about?
No, it's time to take and break the bonds, and remember, break it you can't just break a chain, you can't just pull it apart. It takes slow, gradual grinding away at each link before you're about to pop off that thing. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, it's all small, small pieces, and it takes time.
Yeah.
But remember, like you said, 5 years from now, well, you've got plenty of time to start making small incremental changes now, and you just gotta start with truth.
Yeah. Don't use excuses. Don't use excuses.
Right.
You know,
Let's break free.
break free. Forward we go.
Where we go. Love everybody.
Until next time.